Hello and welcome to Joey and Friends. My name is Joey and I'm here with one of my friends, Michael Kern.
How's it going, man?
It's so good.
I'm excited to be here.
We're potting late at night, as usual.
It's Joey and Friends After Dark.
I don't think we've ever done a daytime pod.
Not in a long time.
Not as dads.
Not as fathers.
It's a great time to record. It's 9:30 at night. The kids are asleep. I'm assuming your baby's asleep right now.
I hope so.
Yeah.
I left her home alone, so should be fine. I did not.
I know.
I did not.
That'd be insane. That would be a horror movie in and of itself. Speaking of horror, we're here to talk about it.
I'm so ready.
It's been on my mind a lot, really, mostly thanks to you. We did an episode over on your pod. By the way, Michael Kern, host of The Culture Docket.
Hello.
Available wherever you get your podcasts.
All over the place.
I've been really enjoying it. You have a great podcast voice.
Oh, that's so kind.
I've been catching up on a few episodes lately, and it's great. You've got the voice for it. It's very NPR.
I feel like I've really just tried to emulate you.
Really?
In a lot of
You're
ways.
too sweet. I'm squeakier though. You know, like I modulate or I go up and down a lot more based on my excitement level. You keep it really calm and cool. I like it.
Well,
it's good.
Yeah.
It feels more professional.
Well, I don't know.
You're like, I wasn't gonna say.
No,
it,
this
but-
is more fun. I think.
Okay.
Yeah. I want more energy, but I just sometimes I can't get there.
No, it's all good.
So
It's all
here
good.
we go.
I like it. Yeah, so we did an episode over on your pod. It was a movie swap, and the movies that we swapped were Tom Hooper's Les Mis.
Sure.
A little bit of a troll move by me.
Yeah.
And The Descent, which was
directed by someone I don't even know.
Do you not? You don't know the director?
I don't.
That's so funny. The Descent is a horror movie. I'd say capital H horror, right?
Yeah.
It's definitively in the horror genre.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And it was scary.
Yeah.
And we watched it together before recording the episode, and I was scared pretty much the whole time.
Sure.
It's really it's like what's around that corner is kind of constantly the vibe in that movie.
And then when you find out, you're like, I don't like that.
You know, it's funny. Well, okay, where do we want to go first? We're talking horror today, basically.
Yes.
And we're going to talk a little bit about the Christians' relationship to horror, right?
Yeah, I'm really excited.
You
about
and I are
this.
both followers of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ.
That's right.
And I think our goal is to honor him in the way we live our lives. And you are a big horror fan.
I
You
am.
watch a lot of horror.
I do.
When did that start for you?
Man, you know, my mom, when she was young, hated horror movies because she would watch them and then her older brother would scare her, which was her most unfavorite thing.
Yeah.
And I do think that is a pretty rude thing to do
Yeah.
if you have just recently seen a horror movie.
Uh-huh.
I'm trying to get my wife into them, and it's like it's outwardly spoken, but also very unspoken. Like, you do not scare me after we watch these movies.
Oh,
There's no
totally.
sneaking around. There's
Yeah,
no
yeah.
jump scares. If I'm gonna watch this, you have to be a gentleman about it. But then I guess as I was growing up, my mom was like, "Hey, check out some of these films."
Oh, really?
And so from like my teens is when she was like, all right, it's time for you to watch The Shining. It's
Yeah.
time for you to watch The Sixth Sense. It's time for you to start checking out some of these classics
Yeah.
that are good. And from there, it kind of just exploded and just became a genre that still scares me for
Yeah.
the most part, but it's something I really enjoy watching.
Yeah. It's basically the opposite for me. I have seen... I have to be really interested. Up until now, I've had to be really interested in order to see a movie. Like, there almost has to be like a cultural pressure around it. Like Get Out. I was like, okay, everybody talks about this as like a seminal entry in the horror canon. I'm like, I've got to see Get Out. And then I was like, well, I was watching a bunch of 1999 movies, and I saw Blair Witch Project because I was trying to check off all these movies.
Scary.
And I watched that in the middle of the day. And I was like pausing it every like 20 minutes to kind of like, oof, okay, which is funny because nothing actually happens in that movie.
I know.
Not to spoil the Blair Witch Project, but it's kind of all building up to nothing in a sense.
Yeah, but then there's that fear of the unknown is just that emotion that that effective horror movies can really evoke.
Yes.
Which is just so cool.
Totally. So there's a few others, I've thrown out most of the movies I'd throw out. You'd be like, that doesn't really count. Like A Quiet Place is one that I threw out. I think that's like,
I mean, it's adjacent.
yeah.
Yeah.
But then, so we saw The Descent together and it was definitely scary. It was definitely, and you can hear our thoughts on that. Not that we want to get into the center now. We talked about that over on your pod. So listeners, go check out the.
I know it's not out yet.
Oh yeah. Do you have a date? No pressure.
No, I don't
Okay.
have one yet. It's to be determined.
Okay,
but it's good. It's
you've
fun.
been cranking them out.
I have been.
You've got a lot going on.
I know.
over there.
There's just so much content. It's big summer of
Yeah.
movies and books. There's all kinds of stuff going on.
And we're having a big horror moment right now. Unprecedented horror moment.
Truly,
right
something we've never seen before.
Which is kind of the reason for this pod. It was really these two movies that we're going to talk about on the back end, which are Backrooms and Obsession, which are taking the movie world and really the culture at large by storm right now.
Yeah.
These movies are making crazy amounts of money. Truly, I mean, people might not understand like how much horror movies or like indie films typically make. These are making exponentially more than what the average low budget indie horror film is expected to make.
Yeah, I mean, I think you look at the multiplier, right? So Obsession was made for $750,000, and it was a major sensation opening weekend, and then it grew on its second weekend, and then grew on its third weekend, which has not happened since 1982.
Since E.T.?
Since E.T.
Yeah.
And you just see every day. I mean, the dailies are coming out. Last night, today's Tuesday, last night, it was back at number one again in its fourth week.
That's crazy.
Which
beating a Star Wars movie,
which you just do not see. Star Wars like out of the top 5, which
crazy.
is insane.
Yeah,
love to see it.
Yeah. So anyway, that's exciting. We're gonna get to that in a little bit. I wanted to start by talking more generally about horror, about this genre that I don't totally understand very well. And I wanted to ask what kind of the like main horror subgenres are, because there's a lot of different kinds of horror movies. I think as like someone who has not been engaged in the genre, I could probably have come up with a list, but I haven't actually seen any of the movies that would go on the list. So you, I think, are much more of an authority as far as like the kinds of movies there are and what belongs in each category. So could you just walk us through what you would identify as the main horror subgenres?
Yeah, I think it's weird. And I think, as we sort of walk this back and talk about horror from a Christian perspective and what does it mean as a Christian to watch horror movies, and I would kind of push back on that. I would say, well, what does it mean as a Christian to watch movies? What are we looking to gain from them? What are we looking to not gain from them? Those would be the bigger questions. So when it comes to horror, I think, and we'll probably talk about this later, like the different types of the scale of movies that can be edifying for Christians or not so edifying for Christians. But some of the main horror genres I would say would be like monster creature movies. You got the thriller horror movies that kind of blur the lines of like, oh, here's a thriller, but it's extra scary.
Okay.
And really, I think that's sort of my main point about horror is all of these genres are pretty normal genres that don't have to be horror. Like you could watch a cartoon monster movie, or you could watch a monster movie that really scares you.
That's an interesting point. I think there's only one very obvious exception on here.
Yeah. So I would say, but even ghost stories, like you have kids movies that are about ghosts.
Totally.
Casper, Coco. Like there's a lot of stuff going on, and you change the music in Coco, and you change some of the villainy, and that's a horror movie. So it's just the way the movie is made. And then there's obviously the supernatural horror movies, which is probably where we'll spend some of our conversation. There's the slasher/torture movies, like the Chainsaw Massacres and the Saw movies and things like that. And then I would say comedy horror, where you are horrifying things are happening, or there's a lot of gore, but it's also played for laughs. And then I think probably the big one that's been on the rise, and I would say that Obsession and Backrooms both fall into, would be like psychological horror, where you have things that are going on that kind of mess with your mind, but also can scare you as well.
Psychological horror feels kind of adjacent to social horror, which is another. Get Out, I think, is kind of the number one movie. It almost seemed to like kind of invent that as a category, and that there were a lot of imitators that came after Get Out that wanted to do that as well. So would you kind of put that in as its own category, or maybe more in psychological? Yeah,
I think that Get Out to me is more like a thriller horror, because it really, minus a couple sort of scary scenes and some gore at the end, is a pretty just straight down the line social commentary movie that has some thrilling elements. I think where it kind of gets that R rating with some scary moments, with some of that gore that you see at the end, that's sort of what crosses into the line for me to becoming a horror movie.
You probably could have done Get Out PG-13
for sure.
You would have had to cut some stuff. But like you could have done it.
You could have made all the same points and had all the same social commentary without having it be a horror movie.
So I appreciate the acknowledgement that there are movies, there's so many different kinds of movies that Christians can watch with all kinds of content in them. And I think I don't know, certainly like decades ago there was a lot more, I think, hand-wringing about what kind of about Christians going to the movies even at all, and what kind of like them not kind of even it's so funny, I was just talking to my Mimi about this. She was in her 80s she was like, we grew up and like we weren't allowed to go to the movies like as Christians. Like that was something that was like heathen. That was something that wasn't permissible for us. And then slowly over the last few decades, we got into a place where I think most I posted that I had seen Obsession and Backrooms on my Instagram story, and like I don't think anyone at my church is going to bat an eye. Maybe they're going to be like, oh, it seems a little darker. So, check the parent guide. Like, oh, is that okay that Joey's seeing that? I don't know. Most people in my circle are not miffed by Christians watching these kinds of movies.
Yeah, I think that what has been interesting when people find out that I like horror movies, and especially when they find out that I like the supernatural horror movies, and they're like, how can you as a Christian watch that? And I think that's a very fair question that anyone can be asked about any genre of movie. Yeah. Because any movie is presenting a point of view. Any movie is portraying a worldview. And for most movies and most entertainment coming out of Hollywood, that worldview is incompatible with the Christian worldview. Yeah. So whether you're watching, The Conjuring, or whether you're watching Avengers Endgame, there are worldviews there that may be either consistent or inconsistent with Christian values.
Totally.
So I think that horror movies really get a bad rap.
Yeah.
I think people kind of see them as either being overly violent or overly evil, and so it's something that people should not be engaging with, when I would kind of push back on that. And I would say, look, you have to make a decision based on your conscience as to what you're comfortable with, and then also look at what the messaging of these movies can be, and not all of them are. Not every movie is created equal. Yeah. And then make that decision for yourself instead of writing off an entire genre, or just saying, well, I'm only going to watch superhero movies because good guys or whatever. Right. Totally. Which is a genre I don't care about because I don't find particularly interesting. But I will say that, and I've said this many times, is that I think that horror movies is really the last stand of original filmmaking in Hollywood.
Okay.
I think that you have the most ability for new voices in film to be able to get some ideas on a screen. And because the genre is so magnetic to people who may not otherwise go to movies, because going to a horror movie is such a better experience than going to see other movies, is there's a chance for people to really get their start. And you see that with like Ari Aster. He made his first couple movies, Hereditary, then Midsommar, and now he's kind of moved into the things that he's more interested in making, like Eddington and Beau is Afraid, which are not really horror movies, but are sort of the direction that he's taken his start in to go to so he can kind of make his movies that he wants to make.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think so. Obviously, I think as Christians, we have this understanding, right, that everything is permissible in a sense. It really is based on personal conviction as far as like what you consume. There's also the verse comes to mind about like it's not what enters a person, but what comes out of them that defiles them, right? And so it really is up to you to kind of consider what impact is this having on my soul? What impact is this having on my heart? What is this movie doing to me? I think the most important question, though, is what am I producing as a result of having seen this movie? Okay. Right? Because it's like, that is the thing that I think really matters, because you can take in a horror movie. You can take in these images. You can take in this experience, the sights, the sounds, like the visceral feeling of watching a movie. It enters you, right? And then it's like, how are you now living differently as a result of that? I think is the most important thing to measure. It's like the fruit of allowing these things to be a part of your story, a part of your experience, whatever.
But I just guess the question I would have is, I think that's valid.
Yeah.
But are you having the same level of conversation about something else that you would watch that's rated PG or a family?
Should.
I would agree, but I just don't think that that's necessarily the level of analysis that's happening.
Yes.
And there's a heightened level of scrutiny for horror movies because of whatever the perception is, either in the culture or by Christians in general, who maybe don't understand exactly what movies are. And also, not all movies are created equal. Not all horror movies, I would say, you should watch that because it's a fun horror movie, or you should not watch any horror movies because these 5 over here are really unpleasant.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there is a certain like aesthetic level to this. There's almost even like a very superficial, like that poster looks dark.
Sure.
And that looks evil to me. Therefore, like I should have suspicion as a Christian of whether or not I should go near it. Whereas like I was literally reading in Mark yesterday, and I was like, there's so like the number of demon encounters that Jesus has in the Gospels is crazy. So if you're opening your Bible and reading the Gospels and the stories of Jesus, you are encountering the stuff that you see in supernatural horror movies.
I mean, yeah, I was thinking about this on my drive over, and it's like thinking about the story of the guy that was possessed by a demon in the Bible, and he's throwing himself into the fire, and then he's drowning himself.
Yeah.
And like all of these crazy things are happening, and Jesus casts out this demon in a dramatic thing, and people are noticing a difference between someone who is possessed by a demon and who is no longer possessed by a demon. Yeah. Or the story about when Jesus casts out a legion of demons into a herd of pigs, and then they jump off a water, like that's crazy. And if you saw that in a movie, that would be scary.
You could produce a like fully scripturally accurate horror movie based on the Bible, it'd probably go pretty hard. And in fact, I remember, you've seen The Chosen, the TV show The Chosen?
I haven't.
You ever watched it? I watched a little bit of the first season. The very first episode is about Mary Magdalene, and she's demon possessed. And there's this scene where I think it's Nicodemus goes to her house to like pray for her or like encounter, like whatever, do ministry, like, you know, set her free. And I was like, and so she's like kind of in the shadows and it's like dark and creepy, but nowhere near anything you'd see in a horror movie. And I was like, they probably could have gone harder on this and it would have been sick. Like it would have been so cool.
And that's the thing. I think for me, when it comes to horror movies, I'm not necessarily looking for good theology. I'm not necessarily thinking about like, is this a good movie for me or not? And maybe I should do more of that. But for me, it's very experiential. And what is the experience to me of watching a horror movie? It's deeply unpleasant. If it's good, it's really unsettling. It makes me scared. It makes me jump. It makes me like want to cover my eyes with my hoodie so that I don't see because I know something is going to jump out at me. And I love that feeling.
It's such a funny contradiction because that was the experience I had in particular in Obsession, where it's like I'm watching it through my fingers or I'm like looking away from the screen because I know something's coming, right? So it's like why do you do this to yourself? Like why do you, if it is such, like I told you when I was watching Obsession, I was checking my phone to see how much was left because it was such an unpleasant experience, but I walked out like high-fiving strangers and like laughing about like what we're getting into Obsession now, but like what an exciting experience it was. So what is that juxtaposition of like it being so unpleasant in the moment, but then so exuberant after?
You know, I am not a fan of roller coasters, and I think we may have talked about this before. And so I'm very much was the kid that would go to Magic Mountain with family or friends, and I would be the one holding all the backpacks and stuff while everyone would go on the thrill ride. They'd be like, that was so exciting, and I love the way that made me feel, and that was so scary, and everyone's high-fiving, and I don't enjoy that experience. So I like Space Mountain. It's like a really low-key roller coaster, but that's like it. I don't want more dropping. I don't want more spinning. I don't want more upside down. Like I don't want any of that. And so to me, a horror movie is replicating that sort of thrill that you would get from a thrill ride like that, where it makes you feel something that is controlled, but also you still feel fear about. Like you're watching Obsession. It's not real. You know that the scenarios are not real. You know that these people cannot hurt you. You know that they are not coming behind you.
Totally.
But yet you still are feeling that thrill and emotion that something artificial is able to generate in your body and your mind.
Yeah. Okay, so I made up this scale for the sake of conversation, which is just kind of like edifying to degrading on the life of the Christian. Do you accept or reject my premise of all horror movies being plotted on this scale?
I mean, I think all content we could probably put on that scale.
Yeah.
I just think we as a society, and maybe we as a church culture, are more willing to put horror movies on this scale and scrutinize them more closely than we would something else.
Yeah, totally.
You know, I'm trying to think of what the last major phenomenon was that people were seeing, or even a Star Wars movie. Like, what are those things teaching us about the world? What are those things teaching us about spirituality? And what is the Force? And how damaging is that for a Christian? But nobody's watching Star Wars and be like, this is actually really bad for Christians to be watching.
Yeah.
You know,
I think there was more of that maybe 50 years ago or 30 years ago.
Right. Well, I think when Harry Potter was coming out and I was growing up, I wasn't allowed to watch those because of the sorcery and the magic, and that's not good and all of those things. And, you know, now I think we can watch them and say, yeah, I don't believe in magic, and that's not really going to impact my life. So I just don't know that it's a fair scale, but I will play by your rules. I will play by the rules.
Let's talk through some of these. Can we start with the monster creature genre? Can you give me just a few examples in this genre?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think some of the key ones, you have Alien, the Ridley Scott masterpiece, which honestly now, you know, 50 years later, not that scary.
I've seen that, actually.
It's a beautiful movie.
Yeah.
And I love it. Then maybe some more recent examples would be like Nosferatu from a couple years ago, the Robert Eggers movie. You also have like the underworld movies that have vampires or werewolves, but not in the cute Twilight way, but also, you know, that can be scary. Or Cloverfield was a big one, which, you know, again, just a PG-13 movie, but it was scary and it was about some things happening.
Pan's Labyrinth I've seen. I see you have that on here as well.
Yeah.
Love Pan's Labyrinth.
Yeah, it's a great movie. And that is truly a horror movie. I mean, if you think about the scenario, you have this young girl who is in a very unpleasant familial situation, moving in with this horrible warlord who is treating her mother badly and who is treating her badly and her adopted brother badly.
Yeah.
And then she finds herself in a world of really scary monsters and creatures that are all trying to either hurt her or manipulate her in some way. That's horrifying.
Yeah.
It may not be the most scary movie around, but it is truly a horror movie. And I think some really interesting themes that you can can think about in your own life when you watch it.
You know, I think Christians are not aware of this, but there are more references to monsters and creatures in the Bible than you would realize. And the Bible Project has done some really cool work in this area, talking about like the Leviathan in Genesis 1, and like there being like these sea monsters that are in the Bible, and that coming up later on. And so I think there's like room for this in the Christian imagination, of this idea of these kind of other creatures or monsters that are dangerous or harmful to humans. I think it's a fun thing to play around with.
Yeah, and I think also, you know, in horror movies, and what I think I love about them is, you know, I'm a lawyer, so my job is to make arguments, right, that convince people. And so sometimes in order to do that, you have to take a argument to its most insane and logical end. So someone can say, well, what about this? And you say, well, if you consider this, like, let's walk it down to the most insane result of that argument. And so I think horror movies allow you to operate in the space of the most insane argument.
Oh, yeah.
Because you are taking something that in a normal situation could be nice and innocent and fun. And then you're taking it to what is the worst case scenario of how this could happen, and how would these people react in the most horrifying, most pressure cooked situation of all time.
Yeah,
and I think that's what I like about horror movies, is they put me in that pressure cooker, and then they give me some catharsis of feeling like, oh, these people are processing their horror, and now I don't have to in my own life.
Yeah, that's great. Thriller horror. This seems like the largest genre. This feels like a real catch-all.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think, and I was trying to find ones that were kind of like on the border. I don't know if you ever saw this movie called Don't Breathe. It's a movie about a blind man who these 3 teenagers are trying to rob because he has an amazing amount of money. Okay. But they end up in his home, locked in his home, and in the basement and in the dark. And as he is pursuing them with his heightened senses, and that is a story that could be
a great log line.
And it gets really unhinged from there. And so that to me is a very scary movie, but also nothing about it that would kind of cross into the lines of like supernatural or something that would make someone feel uncomfortable, other than I'm very scared and I'm very stressed out right now.
It's a real life scenario. It's crazy, but there's a level of grounding to it. Yeah. To the premise. Yeah.
I think you also have a lot of serial killer type movies where people are hunting for serial killers, and those can either be like pretty procedural or they can be really scary. So you have like Zodiac, more procedural, Long Legs, very scary, very demonic.
I've seen Zodiac, love Zodiac.
Yeah. A couple other recent ones that I really liked were The Invisible Man. I don't know if you saw that.
I saw a lot of trailers and behind the scenes content.
It's a really wonderful movie that is scary.
Yeah. Totally.
And it's really a thriller. So that is probably the most fun genre, I would say.
Yeah.
And that's probably the least controversial.
Yeah, totally. Ghost stories. This is fun.
Yeah, I love a ghost story. I love ghost books. I love ghost movies. Yeah. I don't particularly believe in ghosts. I believe in the afterlife. I believe in the supernatural, but I don't necessarily believe in ghosts in the way that they are portrayed in movies. But oftentimes, and again, thematically, why I love these movies so much is the ghosts are usually representative of something in the main character's life. Like, what is the grief? What is the regret? What is the loss? What are the things that the ghosts are representing, which are more just a way for somebody to watch as these characters process through whatever that emotion is. Yeah. So I love The Others, which is such a great ghost movie with Nicole Kidman. The Night House from a few years ago with Rebecca Hall, who sees like a parallel house to her own, which is really cool. And then another Guillermo del Toro movie, which I just think is aesthetically so cool, which is Crimson Peak. Not that scary, but a really good ghost story.
Nice.
So again, if you're curious, I tried to put the ones on my list here that I thought you would actually enjoy.
Oh, okay, great.
So you can use this as like your
exciting my log, my guide to the horror world. Supernatural. This is probably the one I'm least interested in going near, despite the fact, I think, based on pure fear factor, maybe just based on like me believing that it is a reality.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is truly what makes these movies the most terrifying to me personally. Yeah. And I think everyone who likes horror movies is usually going to have the ones that are like, this is the one that impacts me the most. Yeah. And I think to the point that I am impacted to maybe thinking like I need to take a step back from these because it's getting a little too much, it would be these ones. Yeah. I have a coworker who says that The Conjuring saved his faith in Jesus Christ.
Oh, wow.
Because these movies often, I think, are the most theologically aligned with what we believe. You know, not only is it just the classic good versus evil, but typically it is Satan versus Jesus. And oftentimes, especially exorcism movies are usually in the context of the Catholic Church because that's where we see it most often historically.
Such cool imagery in that.
Very
side,
cool.
too.
I mean, you see someone with a collar, you're like, let's go.
it's about to
Things
go
are
down.
about to get
Russell Crowe's got a
crazy.
collar on.
But you see these movies, and especially The Conjuring, and not to really spoil any of this, $billion+ franchise of movies, but it usually ends up with someone is possessed or haunted or tormented by a demon, and at the end, the power of Jesus Christ
Compels them to.
It's The Exorcist, like classic. But really, and again, like that's truly what we believe.
Yeah.
And so the question is why would we be so afraid to watch something that we know is true and real? And why would we want to necessarily shield ourselves from seeing that because it might make us feel uncomfortable? And I think that's very valid, but I think somebody who would say, well, it's wrong to watch The Conjuring because it's supernatural, I don't really understand that argument because it doesn't make sense to me.
No, yeah.
Like if we believe that demons are real and that they do have the power on this earth to do these sorts of things, but we know that we follow someone who is greater and more powerful than these demons and who can rescue us from those, then why would we not be interested in hearing that story?
Yeah. Can I probe a little bit about the fear side?
Sure.
Like specifically pursuing the emotion of fear. Why is that enjoyable? And is that just feels like the verse that comes to mind is like, whatever is true, whatever is lovely, whatever is noble, like think about such things. Like kind of entering that state for fun. Do you have any conviction about that?
I mean, I think it's like any other emotion. Like, why would you go to see a comedy film?
Laughter.
Right, sure. But if you're going to be laughing at something that's maybe a little bit crude, I think we could also pull out some Bible verses that would be like, well, you shouldn't be laughing at that because that would be unwholesome, or let no ungodly speak, or things like that. So I think if we're going to cherry pick Bible verses, then we have to do it evenly across the board. But I think, again, this is why I believe in horror movies by consent, and not to be,
oh, sure.
Like I don't want to force somebody to watch something that they're going to be uncomfortable with.
Totally.
But I think just your experience over the past 3 weeks of you watching The Descent and then you seeing the 2 biggest horror movies of the year and of several years, and you going in, feeling that emotion, walking out, and then feeling amazing. Like there is something to that.
Mm-hmm. It really was a joyful, and the theater experience was really a key part of it, especially for Obsession, because it was a full theater. It was midnight, or it was an 11:30 showing. And the room was just like electric, like it was just exciting. And there was that, it was a communal, joyful experience that I think is good for the soul. Like me and Seb driving home were like, just like filled, like we were just excited. So if that is the feeling that you're going for, I can see I can see the like edifying nature of it for a Christian.
I would say that the ones that I struggle with sometimes, not necessarily like on a conscience level, but is this really good for me to be watching, are the ones that end super dark. And I think a lot of horror movies do end on a pretty unpleasant note. I mean, we even watched The Descent. Like that did not end with a lot of hope for the future.
No.
But you go out and you're like,
depending on which version you watch.
Sure. But you're like, you turn off that movie and you're like, I'm not trapped in a cave. I feel really nice. Like I can be grateful about the life that I'm living right now. But there is, I would say that is what kind of pushes the line for me. Like Long Legs, just feeling like I was in a 2-hour descent into just evil. Did not leave me feeling very edified at all. And so I think that is a very legitimate thing. Yeah. Should I not have watched it? Maybe, but how was I to know going in that I would, how it's going to end. Right. What my experience is going to be.
We got a little sidetracked. So slasher torture is the next one. This was the if I was going to pinpoint one that I'm like, this feels like it's degrading to humans, this is probably the one that I would point at.
Yeah, I would. This is the genre that I don't really resonate with at all. So I would say like the big ones that are popular would be the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which I watched recently just for science and did not enjoy at all. I just find it very gross and really not very. To me, there's nothing redeeming about it at all. Where I think I can make an argument. I think I've tried to make an argument as to why some of these things can be redeeming in some emotional or psychological way. Yeah, these ones just feel very mean and grotesque. I also think that my coworker pointed this out to me, and now I can't unsee it when I see these types of movies, is usually when it comes to women, they're very degrading towards women. And usually the level of violence that women are about to experience is usually correlated to the level of undress that they experience.
Oh,
so
wow.
you can see like as soon as a girl character like takes off a shirt and it reveals like a bra underneath or whatever,
Yeah.
usually that means that some significant violence is coming. And so there does seem to be this kind of perverse connection
that's
between
very gross.
sexuality and violence in these
Yeah.
movies that I don't find edifying at all.
Yeah.
Some of the other ones I put on there would be like the Scream movies, which I do find a lot of fun. I think those are like kind of funny and
they
satire.
seem-
Or like Final Destination, which are very creative, but maybe not the most spiritually edifying.
Yeah. And Saw. I also saw on there,
no,
which is
I think
not
that
going
was
near
that was like the movie that kind of coined the term torture porn.
Oh, golly.
Which is something really that doesn't interest me at all.
No.
I just don't think there's really anything redemptive or useful about those movies for the most part.
Yeah,
with maybe some exceptions that I can think of right now.
I also thought of The Substance. I don't know. That's like body horror, right? Not quite slasher torture, but maybe a little bit closer to that.
Yeah, I put
side.
that more psychological.
Okay,
I think that was really trying to, again, take the argument of like, what is our society saying about women to its most insane conclusion.
Yeah, totally.
So
interesting.
But yeah.
And then last bucket, comedy horror. You've got Zombieland on here, which I've seen and I love.
It's a horror movie.
Yeah.
There's zombies. There's a lot of blood. They're eating people. And there's a lot of really funny jokes in there.
I really liked the tone of that movie. And it was very easy for me to not be upset by the grotesque violence of it because it's Jesse Eisenberg being funny and quippy. Like that, the tone of it, or even like the graphics coming up of like, right? Isn't it like one kill, two kill?
No,
like,
it's
whatever.
very clever.
So I don't know. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I did that.
I did have one more. I don't think it might not be on your list. It's psychological horror, which I think is the final catch-all.
Yeah.
And so that I would put movies like Hereditary or The Babadook or Black Swan. Have you seen Black Swan?
I've not. I've almost watched it a few times.
It's a cool movie, horror movie, definitely. Jacob's Ladder, The Shining, or Doctor Sleep, like movies like that where it's really very psychological, like what's going on in the characters' brains and minds.
Yeah,
that can be really scary. Yeah, so that would be my last bucket.
We'll see what I get into next. I don't know if I'm like chomping at the bit to like really dive into this genre, but I think I feel a little bit more interest in dabbling here and there. Like I don't think I'm gonna be like, let's make my like horror list on Letterboxd and work my way through it. Sure. I don't think that's my future.
Yeah, I think that for any movie type of goal is you really want to watch the things that you're going to enjoy, and then there's always some homework like, okay, well I guess this is the most important horror movie, and so now we should really like check this out so I can say I've seen it.
Yes.
But I do, and that's the thing, it's like we have over a century of horror movies now. That doesn't mean that they're all good. It doesn't mean they're all worth watching.
Yeah.
But I do think that because the experience is so exciting, that my personal thesis is like even a bad horror movie is still a good use of 90 minutes because I still felt something and because I still like had that kind of emotional catharsis.
Yeah, totally. Okay, let's talk about the two biggest movies, maybe not the biggest movies, but the biggest surprises of 2026, which are a movie called Obsession and a movie called Backrooms.
Yeah.
We're going full spoilers here.
Okay.
Full spoil, just to warn everybody, letting you know if you're thinking about seeing these movies, we're going to be talking about them from beginning to end because I think you have to, because I think a lot of my enjoyment in particular of Obsession specifically has to do with like the final 5 minutes of the movie. So I just can't not talk about it here.
What's funny to me is I watched this movie twice because I knew we were going to, I watched it again knowing that we were going to talk about it. And to me, this movie, as someone who watches a lot of these movies, is pretty spoiler proof because there was not a moment that I know exactly what was going to happen next in the movie.
Yeah.
Because I made a separate list on another document just kind of listing out all the tropes of horror movie tropes that it copies. And I think at 10, I was like, all right.
Yeah.
We've
we've proven the point.
We've proven the point. Which is not a knock on Obsession at all, but just I think these movies, if you've seen enough horror movies, are sort of spoiler proof.
Okay, yeah. Well, a joke that I made, because so I'm coming into the genre pretty new, and so I'm seeing this movie and it's using all these tropes that are new to me. So I made the joke like if you showed someone who's never seen a movie before, if you showed them Free Guy, which is a movie we both agree is pretty abominable, they'd be like, this is a 5-star movie, right? And so, or really like any, insert any bad movie here. Right. Someone who's never seen all these things that we're so used to seeing in movies, they're going to be amazed by it. Yes. So I think this movie has a lot going for it for me, just in terms of that, where I'm like, this is so she was over in the corner and it was dark and it was creepy. This is crazy. I've never seen that before. Whereas like Seb on the way home was like, I've seen that in like a lot of horror movies.
Yeah.
Like, there's always someone in the corner in the dark.
And I think that's what's fascinating to me about the phenomenon surrounding Obsession.
Yeah.
Is like, to me,
Like,
there's
why this?
Right. Yeah. There's
Yeah.
nothing that is so over the top special about this movie that it makes enough sense for me to truly understand it, other than it's a really good time at the movies. It's a great date movie. I think you can go with your significant other who maybe is not as into horror movies, or you could be like, I've heard this is really fun, and you can have a fun time even if you are a little bit scared.
Yeah, totally. So there's a few interesting things that I think are like kind of linking. People are calling it kind of like a little bit of a Barbenheimer for sickos moment,
Yeah.
right? Where it's like these two movies came out around the same time and are both doing really well, kind of in conjunction. They're being mentioned in the same breath. There's a few things that kind of connect them. One is they're both made on very modest budgets. Obsession, you mentioned $750,000. For anybody who doesn't follow the film industry, that is nothing. Like $1 million is like bottom of the barrel in terms of a budget. So like anything below that is like pennies basically. And it's made, what is it at now? Is it at 180 million domestic?
I think it might be higher than that.
It's like crazy, right?
It's insane. Yeah.
And is still, like we said, not since E.T. has a movie increased in its like next 2 weekends. Like it's crazy that it's been that long. Like that's like the precedent is just insane for this.
I think it really just speaks to the word of mouth, and
Yes.
also the cultural moment that it is you're seeing it and you're telling people to see it, and then you're going to see it again,
Yeah.
and then I'm going to see it again, even if I didn't think it's the best movie of all time,
Yeah.
because it's just so fun and people are talking about it, and you just want to be a part of the experience.
And that was what really got me into the theater, was like everyone's talking about this. I need to see these movies.
Yeah.
Obsession, similarly, a bigger budget, 10 million, but that's not a huge budget, right?
No,
that still is an indie film.
Yeah.
And is similarly, I think, 200 million is what I'm seeing here at the top. It's gonna make a lot of money. It's gonna make more than Mandalorian and Grogu.
Which is unbelievable.
It's like, I think it's like 15 million away at this point.
I
I was
love-
looking
I
at
love
the
it so much.
box office mojo.
Also, I think notable about both these movies is they're both filmmakers are in their 20s or below when these movies were made. They're both YouTube sensations. They had a built-in audience from YouTube, but I think what the box office is demonstrating is that their audience has grown far beyond just their YouTube following,
Yes.
and are able to garner interest among people that are older. I don't know. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm older than you. When I saw both these movies, I felt like the oldest person alive.
Oh yeah.
Everyone in the theater was much younger than me.
Yeah.
Which I love to see, because you usually don't see a lot of Gen Z people.
No. I think it started. I think that was what got these movies their like initial push. Backrooms in particular made 80 million in its first weekend. You guys, we cannot stress enough how insane that is. That like I don't know, Thunderbolts probably didn't get to like 40 million in its opening weekend, right? Like big budget movies don't do this well.
Yeah, I think what was it, the 5th biggest horror opening of all time or something like that, which is pretty
Nuts.
unbelievable. Yeah.
And then the age of the directors I think is also kind of linked. Kane Parsons is 20, who directed Backrooms, and then Curry Barker's 26, that directed Obsession.
Yeah.
So just like a cool thing, like just a cool moment. Right?
I think it is a cool moment that everyone wants to be a part of. And I
Yeah.
think that used to be more of what movies were about, where we would have cool moments that people wanted to be a part of every weekend. And, people want to say IP is dead. IP is not dead. Toy Story 5 is going to do just fine. The new Spider-Man movie is going to do just fine. But I do think that we are tapping into, and I'm not doing anything, but the entertainment industry is maybe starting to tap into what creates interest, and maybe it's not the 6th movie in a franchise that your parents liked.
Yes, totally.
And so I do think that is a really cool thing.
So I just want to talk about both of these movies. I think they deserve it. I will admit I'm like more excited to talk about Obsession. So let's go Backrooms first.
Okay.
I think I really enjoyed both of them. Backrooms is based on this internet lore that I was only barely familiar with going into it, but it's basically Kane Parsons on his YouTube channel used Blender to make all these like found footage style VHS videos, just kind of walking through these back rooms. But then, at the end you see something crazy or uncanny. These started getting posted about 4 or 5 years ago on YouTube.
Have you seen them?
I watched a bunch of them.
Yeah, they're pretty cool.
They're exciting. Yeah. It's weird how mesmerizing they were, and how much after seeing the movie, I like wanted more of it. Like it was weird how addictive it was. I understand how this became such a phenomenon. Like you can play Backrooms, like you can walk through Backrooms on Roblox. Like it is in the culture. It's kind of like internet lore in a sense. And so I think, a big contingent of Gen Z was just aware of this and clearly showed up opening weekend and
Yeah.
was like ready for it.
Really ready for it.
Pretty cool.
And I guess, if we are doing some spoilers, what's interesting is from what I've seen of the YouTube videos, and I think sounds like you've probably seen a few more, is there's really not a whole lot of narrative structure to any of these videos. It's literally just people walking around and maybe some Easter eggs and clues like, oh, I recognize this company or this shirt matches something that somebody did before. And so when they made the movie, they kind of had to shoehorn in an actual movie plot.
Yes.
Which I thought was the weakest part of Backrooms.
Do you mean like the therapy, or do you mean more like the Mark Duplass's character?
I think all of it.
Okay.
I think all of it didn't amount to a ton. I thought a lot of it was really interesting, but I think the difference when I left Backrooms versus when I left Obsession is one left me like, oh, that was a full movie that I watched and was exciting. And then Backrooms, I thought, okay.
Yeah.
Like I had fun in the theater while watching it, and then as soon as I left, I thought that wasn't really very
I
satisfying.
really enjoyed it in the theater. I don't think so. I took a group of 5 guys to see Obsession the other night because I wanted to share it with people. Like
Nice.
I wanted to share the experience. Backrooms, I don't think I would like recommend to anybody unless it's someone like you that I know is like interested in filmmaking, in a particular like aesthetic or approach that might enjoy this enjoy the vibe of it. Because I really did enjoy being in the world of the movie. Like it was very enveloping for me. Like it was just a cool thing to be a part of. But not everybody is kind of down for the like how much of a slow burn. It is a little bit of a slow burn relative to Obsession.
It's a slow burn that doesn't really light anything on fire at the end, which is a little frustrating.
Yeah.
I think that's fair. You don't have, but I think that Backrooms is the better made movie.
Okay.
And people ask me all
You're
the
the
time.
authority on this.
People ask me all the time. They're like, if I can only go see one, which should I see? And
Yeah.
my answer is obviously go see both because they're both cool. But I say, well, if you want to watch a better made film, go see Backrooms. The way it's made, the way it is, just the way it transports you to a really cool world. That's the better made movie. But I think ultimately, I would say go see the more crowd pleasing movie, the one that's going to make you feel all those range of emotions, and then you'll walk out wanting to high five people and go see Obsession instead.
Yeah.
So I'm going to do this. I'm going to turn it back on you.
Okay.
You saw Backrooms.
Yeah.
How is your conscience after watching that film?
Oh, like perfectly fine.
And I mean, how do you justify that?
How do I justify what is not to turn it back on you, turning it back on me, but like give me like a specific aspect of it that I should have a conviction of having seen.
Okay, well, I guess, and we can talk about this. I'm going to ask you the question about Obsession too, because because you asked me the question, like, how is it edifying to degrading or what?
Obsession
whatever.
is super fair.
But like this one, so this is a movie about therapy and the mind and the darkness of the mind.
Yeah.
I would say not compatible with the Christian worldview.
I don't know if I understand this movie's worldview necessarily. If in terms of like what it is communicating or even like telegraphing to me about my own mind.
Sure.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. But
I
guess,
walked away with some very clear messages from Obsession, which were edifying and were redemptive to me. Backrooms, I did not get a clear sense of like the messaging or the theme.
Okay, but before the challenge was to me, and I'm not trying to be combative at all.
This is fun. No.
But like you're saying, well, how can you justify watching this movie unless it is edifying?
Edifying, yeah.
And I would say Backrooms not edifying. I would argue that Obsession is even less edifying than Backrooms, and we can delve into that when we talk about spoilers. But if the question is whether or not it's edifying, should people go, if they're Christians, should you go see Backrooms?
Well, because actually originally when I made the note, I kind of put like edifying, degrading, and neutral, right? Which I don't know if you could even make the case that like you got to lean kind of one way or the other.
Sure.
Backrooms feels very neutral to me, where it's like this didn't like elevate my soul. I don't feel like dirty or gross after having watched it. It kind of did nothing for me, other than it was like cool to see some tracking shots like going through these rooms,
which were scary.
There's some great performances, the fun of like what's around the corner, like the opening sequence is like genuinely thrilling and exciting,
really terrifying,
great way to drop you into it.
Yeah.
But other than that, I'm like, there's like absolutely no nudity or sexuality in Backrooms.
That's true,
I think. Yeah. And it really is just kind of the fear kind of eerie factor. And so for a Christian, it's like, if you like art, if you like well-made art, this is a really cool like art piece to take in. But yeah, I don't know, up or down, if I feel any way about it.
I think that's fair. And I think my takeaway, and again, my argument is that you don't necessarily have to make this argument. So I would agree with kind of where you landed. But I think that if the argument is, well, you have to figure out if this is edifying or this is supporting a worldview, I would say it doesn't. I think the moral of the movie is that trauma is like a defining fact in your life.
Yeah.
And you can either succumb to the trauma or you cannot succumb to the trauma, and it can turn you evil, or maybe that evil was in you all along.
Yeah.
And who can you trust? And everyone's bad and everyone's mind is screwed up, and like, hope you have a nice night after you've left the theater.
Yeah.
Which doesn't feel particularly edifying.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with that. But I just wanted to ask the question.
Yeah,
that's why we're
it's
here.
fair. It was funny, but me and Seb driving home, we saw both these movies together because we were just on a bender. I was literally at Hearth. I'm talking about Sebastian Fernandez. Sorry, I was sitting at Hearth, and we were with my wife, and we were talking about he was like, you seen Backrooms? And he's like, let's go tonight. I was like, tonight? He's like, yeah, we're going tonight. And then like 2 nights later, he like texted me. He's like, let's see Obsession tonight. Like, so it was this funny like 2 movie kind of back-to-back thing. But driving home from Backrooms, it felt more like we were like, that was good. Yeah, I liked the part. Like, it was like we were trying to talk ourselves into it a little bit more. And I think because of that, the more like I actually had a harder time going to sleep after Backrooms than after Obsession.
Oh, interesting.
Because it left me in a little bit more of an unsettled place.
Sure, that makes sense.
Because
Yeah.
it doesn't end on this kind of like smash bang, like freedom moment.
Right.
Not that we'll get there, but it leaves you in kind of this like unsettled, unfinished place.
Sure.
And so that feeling I don't enjoy as much, kind of having to sit in.
Yeah.
Even if it is useful thematically.
That's fair.
Anyway.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, Backrooms. Worth seeing if you're a film fan.
Yeah, I think it's.
If you're a film fan, you've probably already seen
Yeah,
this.
I think it's good. I think
Yeah.
it's worth seeing, and I think it's fun.
Okay. Obsession.
Okay, here we go.
I feel what do I feel? It's just funny that I'm like so into this movie and it's like my first horror movie.
I love it.
It's like,
This is so cool. I feel like I'm at the ground floor of just like your future.
Yeah, no, it's great. So I'm just going to go straight to the ending because I think the ending was really significant and meaningful in terms of my experience with this movie.
Great.
Once again, for the last time, spoilers for Obsession.
Major spoilers.
I'm saying the last shot of the movie right now. She gets free, right? There's 4 characters. This poor girl is possessed by this. This is a vaguely possession demon movie. It's not super manifesty, but it's there.
Yeah.
There's moments like, wow, there are moments. But in the end, 3 characters die, and she ends up kind of getting unlocked and being set free.
Yeah.
And it leaves you like with this like, despite all the bloodshed and the like the torment of the last 10 minutes, I was like, we did it. we got there. And so there is this like releasing. I felt a sense of release at the end.
No,
like,
it's a very cathartic ending.
yeah.
You feel good, but also ill.
I also loved how there were like 3, maybe even 4 moments where the credits could have rolled in a pretty satisfying way. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the moment at the end where they're kind of, I thought it was going to end. Well, first, like he commits suicide and it's kind of pushing in on him. And I'm like, this would be a good ending, right? Because she's ultimately going to get free. You're not going to see it happen probably, but like he makes the final sacrifice, right? Kind of a good place for it to end.
Yeah.
Then when they're kind of like walking towards each other, like both obsessed with each other, also kind of credits roll. That works, right? But then I ended up liking the ending that we got, which is I think he got what he deserved basically, and she got to be free.
Yeah.
I don't know. What do you make of it?
I mean, I think, again, just because you've prompted me
Yeah.
about this,
Yeah.
I do think this is a very problematic movie.
Okay.
In terms of a Christian worldview.
Yes.
I'm
so excited to
We
talk about
have a lot of swearing in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
There is some sex in this movie, and it does not present a very Christian sexual ethic about the way
not.
that people should be engaging in these things. There's also a kind of, I think, what's the most interesting portion of the movie is the consent aspect of what's going on. Usually you don't think about if you're making a wish how it's going to impact the psychology of another person.
Yeah.
But this movie, I think what it does the best, and I think it's so effective because Indy Navarrete is so good as this Nikki character. Is she is truly, her autonomy is completely stripped from her. And there's a very unsettling moment when he calls the customer service line of this one wish willow that's granted him this wish that makes this girl obsessed with him. And he's like, do you want to hear her? And she's just screaming in the background. And then moments throughout the movie when she is clearly like trying to break through this possessed version of herself to be like, I just kill me. I don't want this anymore.
Yeah. probably the darkest moment of the movie.
And then his response to that is crazy when he says, "What would have been so bad about being with me?" And she, in her like a moment of clarity, is like, "I've never been with you." And I think that really turns the whole movie on its head as to who the protagonist is in this movie, because I think it initially presents the Bear character as just kind of this lonely guy, and he just can't muster the courage, and he does this thing, and it's like things start to go wrong, but you realize that what he's done is so much more serious. And I do think that's an interesting thing to think about as Christians.
Yeah.
But I don't know that it necessarily presents it in a way that is the most edifying to someone.
Okay, so this is a thing that I think maybe a lot of people, this is going to sound a little bit high and mighty, I apologize. I think a lot of people entering into really any kind of art, but just talking about movies specifically, understanding the difference between what is being shown and the filmmaker's perspective on what is being shown, right? Because like you said, this movie does not have gratuitous sex in it, but there is sex in this movie.
Yeah.
And there really is one key scene, right? One main kind of like shock factor sex scene that I think is incredibly well placed. And I think in terms of the storytelling and in terms of like what you were just saying, the wildly unhealthy dynamic between the two of them, advancing that plot and advancing like their relative relationships to each other in that moment is really well placed and is really disturbing to watch. And there is nothing erotic or exciting about that scene. The score drop on it is really intense, and it makes you go like, oh, good Lord, like this right now, like this is the choice that you're making right now. So there is nothing. So that isn't just an example of like, yeah, you're seeing sex happening on screen, right? There's minimal nudity, but you're seeing sex, right? So like that visual, there is a level of like inherently that is not edifying for a Christian or whatever, anybody to see. But in the broader scope of the story that you're telling, this is not a good thing that we're looking at, and the filmmaker knows that.
Yes.
And the way it's being presented communicates that to you. You just have to be willing to kind of like understand and like see that. And so I think it's like understanding the meta narrative of what is going on in the movie, seeing it in context allows you to be like, this is an evil, same thing in the Bible. There is sex in there's evil in the Bible, right? But it's understanding it in context.
Sure. And
so I think that is what makes this movie, I think I can make the case for this movie being edifying because it is redemptive and because of, I think some of the themes that you're talking about, which we haven't really named explicitly.
Yeah, I think I've sort of walked you into my point about horror movies, which is they don't have to be. It's what you are taking from them, and it's what you are viewing as the most important factors. If you think it is not edifying at all to ever watch a movie that has swearing or sex or violence, then horror movies are probably not going to be the genre that you end up going towards.
Totally.
If you are looking for an experience, and that experience is not specifically sinful, and I would say that being scared in the context of a movie for the purpose of entertainment, I would make the argument is not inherently a sin. So then we also have the ones like, how about when it's talking about supernatural things? Well, what does that say about God? What does that say about life? Can those be edifying? Sure. Can a movie like this, which has some things that are not visually or auditorily edifying, maybe we shouldn't be watching or listening to, but can the themes behind them be edifying or draw you into a deeper conversation about the way that you interact with the world? And I think the answer can be different for every single person who would want to engage with any type of storytelling, whether it's a horror movie or whether it's an action movie. But I just think the standard has to be the same across the board.
Yeah, totally. I kind of have like my read on Obsession, but what is your takeaway as kind of the main like theme or message of the movie that it's trying to communicate?
Well, I think that, from listening to interviews and reading things about Curry Barker, it's like I saw an episode of The Simpsons about this monkey paw, and so I wanted to do like a be careful what you wish for thing, which I think is really the main theme.
Yeah.
I think it does bend that a little bit, and there is sort of this rape narrative or this consent narrative, which I think is really interesting. And so I would say, hey, be careful what you wish for, because it could really turn out bad.
Yeah. I think the thing that hit me, it took me a minute. I didn't get here immediately, but I think as I was like processing what really happened in the movie, it was ultimately his appetite and desire that got her locked in to this need for him to love her.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is probably really resonant for a lot of women, where it's like it is ultimately male desire that causes the things that the lengths that women are willing to go to kind of win the affection and attention of a man, I think is just, I don't know, gonna resonate. And some of the women that I've talked to that have seen it, it seemed to resonate with them in that way.
Interesting.
Where you know, I think the immediate takeaway is like, dang, that girlfriend was crazy. Like, I can't imagine having a girlfriend that crazy, right? It's kind of the thing you walk away with. But I think if you like think a little bit harder about it, I think it is recognizing that Bear is not a sympathetic character.
Correct.
He starts as a sympathetic character. He starts as your kind of like sad boy protagonist who just wants to get the girl. But by the end, you're like, this guy is not it.
And I think that's a really cool device the movie uses.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of scary movies can do that, where you present a character and you realize maybe the information that we're learning. I mean, I think even in Backrooms, I think you start with Chiwetel Ejiofor's character being a protagonist. Like, oh, I kind of feel bad for this guy. And then by the end of the movie, he is a psychological villain in the whole thing. So I do like that.
Yeah. The other thing I was going to say, I'm fully stealing this from an Instagram post, but I thought it was really fun and a great, I don't think the movie had this on its mind. I'm quite sure that it didn't, but just pointing out that a lot of Christians ask the question of, why didn't God just place love for him in everyone's hearts? Like, why doesn't he just draw everyone to himself? Why doesn't, the question of like, why aren't we just kind of robots in Eden that just like love God like freely and easily? And I think this is kind of an interesting take on why that isn't actually what you want and why you do want to be able to choose love freely. Again, I don't think this was on Curry Barker's like mind at all when he was making this, but I think it is an interesting thing to take away. It is a great example of, as a Christian, getting to watch a movie and going like, not do I agree with this movie's worldview, but what can I reflect on in my worldview based on the events unfolding in this story.
And I think what you said really nails exactly what we're called to as Christians. It's not to disengage from the world and only read the Bible, but it's to, when we engage with the world, to engage with it through the prism of what we know to be true. Mm-hmm. And how does this either agree or contradict the Word of God?
Yeah.
And making sure that we are mindful whenever we consume any type of media, whether it's books, whether it's movies, whether it's television, whether it's social interactions with coworkers, like what are we doing and how are we renewing our minds to make sure that when we are engaging in these things, we're doing it in a way that's honoring to God?
Yeah, absolutely. I really enjoyed this movie. Like you were saying, it's a little bit unspoilable. I think I understand what you're saying, but I think that is kind of the fun of the movie, where it's like you always know what's coming, but it's still thrilling.
Yeah.
Like you always, like the moment when I forget the characters' names, but when Bear is sitting in the car with what's the other girl?
I forget.
The girl that he likes.
Yeah.
They're sitting in the car. You know she's coming.
Yeah.
The entire scene. You're like, there is no other way. From the moment she texted him, I was like, yeah, you got to separate him from her so that we can get another big scare right out in the park or in the car or wherever. Like, you see it coming from a mile away, but it's still thrilling and it's still exciting. And it's so funny. The second viewing, I felt invincible going into it, because I was like, I know where all the scares are. I get to just kind of enjoy the filmmaking of this movie more. And so I did get to see a lot more of the parts that I maybe saw kind of like through my fingers the first time. But that scene, I still couldn't watch.
Yeah.
I still was like, I had to cover my eyes and like not look, because it is grotesque.
Yeah.
Right. In the way that character does.
I love jumping in movies.
Okay.
I think it's so fun.
I hate it.
And so even watching it a second time, I was still just like, I'm not trying to figure out when this is going to be, and I still want to be scared. And I still was, and I had a great time.
Yeah, can we talk about The Descent just really quick? Yeah. The moment, right? Because it's teasing the monsters for a little bit, but then there is a key moment where it's like it's kind of found footagey. It's like the camcorder, and it pans over, and it's like right there. I screamed so loud, and I hated it. I don't enjoy that feeling. You enjoy that?
I don't love it in the moment, but as soon as it's over and I realize it no longer has power over me, and I can chuckle at my own that something fake was able to make me feel that way.
Yeah.
I love it.
Because there's kind of two kinds of jump scares, right? There's the version where it's like you kind of know it's coming and it happens anyway, right? Where it's like the pan, and it's there, right? It's like you kind of know it's coming. Then there's like the true jump scare, which to me, moment really got me. I think that's why I screamed, is because I really wasn't expecting it. Like, you know what I mean? Like it didn't. It was a good trick of filmmaking to be like, nothing's. They're just like, whatever. So, yeah, it got me. I did want to just compare briefly, because you were saying that you and Courtney both agreed that The Descent is scarier than Obsession.
Way scarier.
I disagree so much, and I think I can engage in this conversation because I just need to have seen these two movies. I don't need to have seen like all these other horror movies to like have an opinion on this. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Why is The Descent scarier to you?
I think for me, because unlike Backrooms, The Descent is 90 minutes of just pure sustained terror. I'm stressed out the entire time in The Descent. I think the jump scares are more effective. I think everything that happens is, to me, plays more on my personal fears. And I think that's a huge part. We didn't really talk about this, but a big part of horror movies, and why I think so many of them are exciting to people, is because they are playing on their specific fears. And so I think people who are more afraid of the supernatural, or who are not fully dialed in as to what is happening, those to me are the most scary, because to me it's the most real. Getting stuck in a cave is my nightmare. I'm very claustrophobic. I don't want that to happen. And then having that happen, and then also there being monsters trying to eat me, that really scares me. Obsession, like, I knew it was going to happen in the story. From the beginning to the end, there was no real surprises to me. There were interesting twists and turns, but nothing like, oh no. And then the jump scares did scare me, but I wasn't afraid the whole movie.
Yeah, I think it's interesting in terms of like, I think The Descent felt a little too far from home for me, where it's like, I'm not going out in the cave. Like, I'm like, this is never going to happen to me. And it feels, the farther down they go, the more it feels like they are in another world. Yeah. Whereas Obsession takes place in our world, and it just feels a little bit more tangible and tactile and kind of, I don't want to say relatable, because I'm not saying I relate to Bear, but like you can imagine being in that scenario.
Sure. And
I think the thing about like monster creature movies is, for me, once I've seen the monster, I'm like, that's an art school dropout in makeup. Yeah. Like, it really is not like, once they're on screen, I'm fine. Like, them roaring, or like even the moments when they're like getting really close to the camera and you're really seeing like everything. It didn't really scare me, because I'm like, this is movie making. Yeah. Whereas I think I was just more invested in the story. And the moments, like you said, where the please kill me, right? Like, it's asleep. Like, that moment sent a shiver down my spine. And nothing in The Descent really. There was the moment when you see I think I mentioned the shot on your podcast, but the wide shot where you see it at the end. That's like, ooh, like, it's like tingly, right? That's the feeling I think I enjoy in horror movies, is I don't know how to describe it other than like tingly.
I would say that I'm similar, where third acts of horror movies don't usually work that well for me, because once I've seen the monster, it doesn't really have that much power over me, which I think is the magic of Jaws, right? Like, that's a horror movie about a shark that's mean, and you don't see the shark really at all. And once you see it, you're like, oh, that's kind of fake looking. And it's not as scary. But those early moments when you're like, where is the shark? Where is it? Scary.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. I just wanted to pick your brain a little bit about that, because it's just so funny for you and I to have such different. It makes me think just this genre is very personal in terms of what it's similar to like comedy. Like, not all people are going to find the same things funny.
Right.
Not all people are going to find the same things scary. It's like you were saying. I think you have to kind of find your own way as far as these kinds of movies go.
Yeah. If I can shout out one more movie,
sure.
Have you ever seen the movie Signs?
No, I haven't.
So
that would probably be an easy watch.
I would say not very scary, but
yeah.
I would say one of the more redemptive and Christian worldview pro movies from a major filmmaker. And really, that movie, and I don't want to spoil it, because I really think that you should watch it. It should be the next movie you watch. But it really finds the intersection of faith and spirituality and providence in a situation that is out of this world, horrifying. And it's not a very scary movie. It's PG-13. Yeah. It scared me as a kid when I watched it. Yeah. But that would be one where I think you could watch that and feel very edified, both spiritually and emotionally and artistically.
That's great.
And I think that if you can find that intersection in what your conscience is cool with, and I think you have to do that with everything, prayerfully, and making sure that you're not just kind of shoehorning your own morality into what you think your conscience wants it to be. Then you can really find some enjoyment in a lot of these movies.
I think that's my pastoral like just note on the end of this podcast is you really have to like be very honest with your own heart and like where you're coming from with this stuff. And it's like, if this is going to cause you to stumble in any way, like stay away from it. I think that's important. But also don't just stay away from something because kind of superficially it looks dark or it looks evil. Cause like we said, there are some dark and evil things in the Bible. And I think God wants us to reflect deeply and well and intentionally and thoughtfully about the darkness in the world, because it is the world that we're living in. We're not just living in a perfect sunshine and rainbows free guy, world.
We're
Like,
not.
There's a lot of darkness around us. And so I think grappling with that is a really good and healthy thing to do.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you so much for joining me on this episode. This was a lot of fun. I look forward to this one a lot.
Really good.
It was basically like an emergency pod. Like we kind of like, I was texted you a few days ago. I was like, can we do this? So,
I know you're kind of like, this is like your gateway drug. I feel like you're just like, I need more. I need it.
I don't. Okay. Last thought. I think if you can guarantee a movie is going to leave me feeling the way Obsession did, in terms of, I just need a little bit of hope at the end. I need like a cute thing, or like this got resolved, or like something at the end to land me. I really appreciate, rather than like Blair Witch Project, where it's like,
Oh man.
who knows, like that I don't appreciate that quite as much.
Okay.
So yeah, that's kind of what I'm.
All right. We'll check back in.
Okay, sounds good. Maybe next year we'll do an annual Joey's Horror Adventures episode. Cool. Thank you guys for listening. Michael, thank you for being here. Listen to the Culture Docket on Spotify and wherever you get your podcasts.
Thanks, man. It's great to be here.
See you later.